this year right here is actually very interesting. Is after watching the Michael movie, there's a lot that they didn't tell us. So we're gonna find out right now. So the title of the video, what's it? By the detail, we got why Michael failed to show us the real Michael Jackson. Was it the Pacers? Oh, absolutely not. The Pacers didn't even make the playoffs this year. All right, come on.
Although Michael has been praised for its performances, visuals, and recreations of some of the most iconic moments in Michael Jackson's career,
I'm talking about this
there
year.
are several parts of the film that dramatically alter, oversimplify, or completely fictionalize major aspects of his life story. And the problem is not just historical accuracy. In many cases, these changes actually weaken the story the film is trying to tell. Because Michael Jackson's real life was often far more psychologically revealing, complicated, and interesting than the simplified version presented in the biopic. Removing many of the collaborators behind his creative success, or inventing fictional scenes designed to make him appear almost superhumanly virtuous, Michael repeatedly misses opportunities to explore the deeper truths behind the man himself. And in doing so, the film sometimes turns a deeply human story into a far safer and more sanitized version of events. So in this video, we're going to break down some of the biggest
A lot of the moments in the movie, like Joe, for example, the way they portrayed Joe in the movie, and how Michael Jackson himself perceived his own father, it's like, I don't know, they probably wanted, I don't know, because I don't feel like it was as bad good portrayed in the movie compared to how Michael was describing every type of instance that they had. Because the way he was talking about it, bro, he start crying every time he bring it up. So like, I don't know, man. If only he was here to tell us. Like, he should have directed. If Michael Jackson was here to direct his own movie, it would be the highest grossing movie in eternity. And I'm telling you, that's facts. You cannot tell me that's not facts, bro. I'm telling you.
Accuracies and missed opportunities in Michael, and why many of them ultimately do a disservice not just to history, but to Michael Jackson himself. Here's the detail. Although Michael goes to great lengths to faithfully recreate many of Michael Jackson's most iconic performances, costumes, and personal struggles, there are several moments where the film either omits crucial context or takes dramatic liberties with the truth. One of the clearest examples of this comes in the film's depiction of the Jackson family moving from Gary, Indiana, to their famed Encino estate. In the biopic, when the Jackson family arrive at their new home in California, the property shown is the now iconic French Tudor mansion most fans recognize today, complete with its grand facade, sprawling driveway, and fairy tale aesthetic. There is just one problem. That house did not exist when the Jacksons moved there. When the family purchased the Havenhurst property in 1971, following the explosive success of the Jackson 5, the home situated on the estate was an entirely different structure altogether. Contemporary photos and reporting from the period show a far more restrained, low-profile, mid-century modern residence. Sleek, fashionable, and very much in keeping with affluent Southern California design of the early 1970s. It featured sunken living areas, shag carpeting, expansive glass, and a resort-style pool at its center. That was the home in which the Jackson family lived throughout.
Oh, he had more siblings, huh? Yeah, I think. What documentary? What did I watch? I think it was on Hulu. They had like Joe cheated on his wife, and then he had another daughter that they didn't really claim as like their own sibling. So sure. That's crazy, bro.
The Jackson 5's Motown heyday, the home they enjoyed off the back of Michael's extraordinary childhood fame, while Michael himself was rarely there. And this is where the film has another major issue in its portrayal of Michael's early life. In Michael, young superstar Michael is shown in an almost idyllic domestic setting, surrounded by childish decor, playing with pets, immersed in fairy tales, and speaking with Catherine around the kitchen table, as though he enjoyed a warm, magical, and relatively normal upbringing. But that depiction fundamentally contradicts the reality Michael Jackson spent his adult life describing.
Yeah, he said he didn't have no childhood, so he's like, the way he would, like the whole idea of Neverland and, yeah. Basically, Neverland's like the main idea of him trying to, I got a Jesus explaining everything and I expect you want to see. What are you talking about? Oh. I don't know what you're talking about. What was I saying? Yeah. Neverland's like the main idea of everything Michael Jackson wanted in his childhood. So, in regards to the way they were shown in the movie, I'm sending it to. Alright, bet. It made it feel like watered down. And it kind of made him. The movie almost kind of made Michael Jackson look like a liar. Because, like, the way he was talking, the way Michael Jackson talked about it and the way they showed it in the movie, it was kind of contradicting everything he was saying his life was really like. And nobody can ever tell you what your life is really like except yourself. So, they really should have had more family, involved with the movie, because it would have made it a lot more realer. We will never get the full Michael Jackson story because he's not here no more. So it's left to other people to tell his story for him. And there's going to be things that, people are not going to remember or know because the main person himself is not here to tell his own tale. So, I don't know. That's why with a lot of movies, especially like I was watching the big George Foreman movie on Hulu. I took in that movie for real, because George Foreman himself was still alive as the movie was being made and finished. That's how it made it more realizing to me that was really his life. And that's what made the story much more impactful. I promise, I started the movie and I didn't get up until I finished it, bro. It was that good. It's all Hulu if y'all want to check it out.
By the time the Jacksons moved into Havenhurst, Michael was not living like a normal child in a fantasy bedroom, enjoying the luxuries his success had afforded the family. He and his brothers were some of the most famous child stars in the world, constantly touring, rehearsing, recording, and working under immense pressure. As Michael later reflected, quote, "I can't remember my childhood. I never had the chance to play with the other kids, to do all the things children do. There was no Christmas, there were no birthdays. It was not a normal childhood, nor were the normal pleasures of childhood there for me."
Well, you don't get to do things that other children get to do. The simple things that they so much take for granted. Mm-hmm. Having friends and slumber parties and buddies and just hanging out. There was none of that for me. I didn't have any friends when I was little. My brothers were my friends.
This is crucial to understanding the man Michael Jackson became. Michael did not spend his adult life clinging to fantasy, innocence, and childlike wonder because he was simply eccentric or naturally immature. He did so because he was attempting to recreate the childhood he felt had been denied to him. Yet the film presents the opposite. In doing so, it fails to communicate the loneliness Michael often described during this period, the sense that while his father and the rest of his family enjoyed the wealth and lifestyle his talent provided, he was the one sacrificing his childhood to sustain it. The Gothic, Disneyland-inspired Havenhurst shown in the film would not emerge until over a decade later, and the story behind its construction is even more telling. Following the success of Off the Wall, Michael's financial and professional stature had grown to such an extent by the early 1980s that he was no longer merely the family's golden goose, but increasingly its financial linchpin. Following mounting financial strain and debts accumulated by Joseph Jackson, Michael purchased Havenhurst from his parents. He then gave 50% ownership of the property to Catherine, while retaining the other.
Wait. He bought out his parents' crib. Wait. Hold on, let me keep listening.
50% himself. That detail is significant because it has been widely reported that Michael did this so Catherine would have security and assets of her own should she ever choose to divorce Joseph.
Damn. Nah, his dad must have been he had that planned out too. Yeah, his dad must have been a deep, bro. There's no way. There's no way. He bought out his parents' crib and then gave half of it back only to his mother. So that just in case, yo. That's great. That's crazy.
Something Michael had encouraged her to do for years by that point. That act alone fundamentally undermined Joseph's mercy.
I did know they used to be on his mom. I know that. It's just, that's what I'm saying. The movie didn't really do a good job on really showing how bad Joe Jackson was. They could have done better, bro. All they was really showing is him getting his ass beat. That's really all like the first 30 minutes of the movie was him whooping him. But like the details on like how it carried Michael into later years. And even it didn't show Michael's full life. It stopped in 1988. So either they're coming out with a part 2 that might connect everything from later in the years, but I don't know. I felt like I needed more to like really understand the life of Michael Jackson. That's what I'm saying.
Merciless authority. Michael reduced the once dominant patriarch to a man living under a roof he no longer controlled. And what happened next was deeply symbolic. Michael did not leave it there. His father's castle, over which he had ruled. He demolished it. The original Havenhurst home, the one purchased by Joe at the height of the Jackson 5's success, the home that had represented Joseph's rise as patriarch and manager, was razed entirely. In its place, Michael commissioned the construction of an elaborate French Tudor-style mansion, inspired heavily by fantasy architecture and Disneyland aesthetics. The redesigned estate reportedly included whimsical storefront facades, toy and flower displays, a private movie theater, a trophy room, exotic animals, koi ponds, elaborate gardens, and even a dramatic 2-story bedroom suite for Michael himself. A personal playground filled with his lost childhood's fantasies. Catherine Jackson reportedly had reservations about aspects of the redesign, later commenting that she found parts of the house too dark and not to her taste. But ultimately, this was no longer the Jackson family home in any democratic sense. It was Michael's money and Michael's vision, built entirely to his liking. By portraying the Jacksons as moving directly into the present-day Havenhurst mansion in 1971, the biopic collapses over a decade of history into a single, inaccurate image. In doing so, it removes an important visual metaphor for one of the most significant developments in Michael Jackson's life. The moment he ceased being under Joseph's structural control and became the most powerful figure in his family's lives. It was a visible, undeniable manifestation of the changing power structure within the...
So I ain't gonna lie, being Michael becoming #1 saved his life. So imagine if Michael Jackson was never successful. Like, what would Joe have done? What would any of the Jacksons do, really? Nobody. I don't know if anybody's ever thought of that. Like, what would they? What would have been of the Jacksons if they weren't raised how they were?
Jackson family, a world in which Michael Jackson created for them, and one in which, in many ways, they still reside in today.
I mean, yeah. They are stars.
Another scene that does a disservice to the...
I ain't lie. When I knew Janet Jackson didn't want to, like, be a part of the making of the movie, that's when I knew, like, something's going to get, like, you know, we're not going to get as a good movie as it could have been. The movie could have been better. It was still good, but it could have been better.
True scale of Michael Jackson's rise to child superstardom is the film's depiction of the Jackson 5 performing "I'll Be There" at a fairground. In the biopic, the performance is staged almost like a pleasant local attraction, one act among many at a carnival, watched by a casual crowd of a few hundred onlookers calmly enjoying the show. Michael is even able to reach out and tenderly connect with a fellow child in the audience as he sings. But for what is effectively presented as one of the defining images of Michael Jackson at the height of the Jackson 5's fame, the sequence dramatically understates the scale of their popularity. By this point, the Jackson 5 were not simply a successful family act performing to polite crowds. They were a full-blown cultural phenomenon. Their achievement of scoring 4 consecutive #1 singles with their first 4 releases, "I Want You Back," "ABC," "The Love You Save," and "I'll Be There," was unprecedented for a debut act and instantly propelled them into a level of fame that many in the press compared to Beatlemania. As Rolling Stone put it at the time, the Jackson 5 had become, quote, "the biggest thing since the Beatles." The group were mobbed wherever they went. Hotels required heavy security. Fans stalked them. Crowds gathered outside airports, venues, and television.
See, they didn't show none of that, bro. That would have made the movie, like, more enticing. You know what I'm saying? You think Michael Forever, #1, DC? Nah, nobody's ever touching Michael Jackson. He's created too many, like, when you think of dances, Michael Jackson. When you think of beats, Michael Jackson. When you think of production, Michael Jackson, bro. King of pop. He will be like that for eternity because nobody can ever get on his level. Drake will never do it. Future, Kanye, like, they just won't do it. But that's why they built their own type of, you know, music style that we don't even need to compare Michael Jackson to any of them, bro, because they're not touching them.
Studios in hysteria. They were not performing to sparse fairground audiences. They were selling out theaters and arenas across America. By 1971, the Jackson 5 had become one of the biggest acts in the world, embarking on international tours.
I ain't gonna lie, Drake ain't as big as we think, bro. Cause I remember going to Africa, bro. I didn't hear no Drake music. I ain't hear no Kanye. I didn't hear no, like, there was a lot of songs that, you know, because I'm in America every day, I'm listening to it. When I went overseas, they wasn't really playing them for real. That's when I knew, like, but Michael Jackson, every African knows, every European knows, every continent knows about Michael Jackson because he was that, like, he was that guy. He was that guy, bro.
Across Europe, Japan, Australia, Africa, and South America, with their fame extending far beyond the United States. And that level of hysteria matters because it further contextualizes Michael Jackson's childhood isolation. The film briefly gestures toward Michael struggling to relate to children his own age, but it fails to truly show why. Because once the Jackson 5 exploded, Michael was no longer merely a gifted child performer. He became untouchable in the literal sense, a global phenomenon separated from ordinary childhood by fame, security, adoration, and constant public scrutiny. That is what made Michael's upbringing so psychologically unusual, that the immense pressure and isolation that fame placed upon him from childhood would inform his life moving forward. Later in the film,
he got the same flow every album. And now it's getting repetitive, bro. Michael Jackson has something new every song, every time.
When the sensitive subject of Michael Jackson's plastic surgery and body image is addressed, the biopic depicts Michael critiquing his nose before visiting a surgeon to have it narrowed, framing the decision largely as an extension of his perfectionism and growing image consciousness as his fame increased. And while that is certainly part of the story, the film misses an opportunity to explore the deeper significance of what Michael's changing appearance represented during this period. Because Michael Jackson's early cosmetic surgery was not merely about vanity. It
Favorite Michael Jackson song? You Rock My World.
was also part of a broader effort to reshape his identity, to separate himself visually from the image of the child star audiences had known throughout the Jackson 5 era, and reinvent himself as an adult solo superstar in his own right. His changing appearance mirrored his artistic transformation. As his music matured, so too did the image he wished to project. When Michael returns home after his operation, the film shows him sheepishly revealing the bandages to Joseph, who responds by smirking and largely brushing it off as another example of Michael's eccentricity. But that reaction feels strangely detached from the reality of the Jackson family's own cavalier attitudes to plastic surgery and importance they placed on appearance.
It's not really plastic surgery. If you don't like your nose, you get it done.
When you have a star such as he, they...
What? Oh no, I ain't gonna lie. Michael had a lot of bad. Yeah. Even with how he died, man, I don't know, bro. Michael Jackson should still be here today, bro. That's a death. That's one death in history that just doesn't make sense. Cause,
They make it much bigger than what it is. As far as all of that, I don't see anything wrong with anything that he's done.
He asked me, he says, can you be the guinea pig for me? He says, can you be the guinea pig? Can you get your nose done and let me see how it looks and if it hurts? No, but I said, Michael, he says, please be the guinea pig for me. I did, I got my nose done, yes.
By the late 1970s and early 1980s, cosmetic surgery was hardly alien within the Jackson household. Multiple members of the family had undergone procedures of their own, including Joseph Jackson himself, who reportedly had a nose job during the same era.
but why? Like, I don't know.
That detail matters because it reflects something deeper about the family dynamic. Appearance, presentation, and image were heavily emphasized within the Jackson household. The way the family looked, both publicly and privately, mattered enormously. And Michael did not develop his insecurities in a vacuum. He repeatedly stated throughout his life that Joseph mocked his appearance growing up, calling him Big Nose and criticizing his complexion.
But you where he got it from? That makes no sense. You have a big nose. Look at this. I think it's, if anything, his nose is wider and fatter than his. Like, what are we talking about, bro? It's that dumb shit, bro. Cause parents be doing that, bro. They be trying to tack on you for something that they probably gave you. Like, what? Makes no sense, bro.
Calling him Big Nose and criticizing his complexion. Other Jackson siblings have similarly spoken about being teased or made self-conscious about their looks, with Janet and Tito both discussing insecurities around weight and appearance. That environment could have offered the film a far richer explanation for Michael's deepening body dysmorphia, an increasingly complicated relationship with his own image. Because Michael's cosmetic surgery or problems with eating cannot be fully understood simply as perfectionism. It was also the product of years of insecurity, scrutiny, ridicule, and an upbringing in which appearance was clearly given extraordinary weight. Even the film's handling of Michael's explanation for the surgery misses a factual detail. In the biopic, Michael tells Joseph he had the operation to help with his sinuses, Yet in his 1988 autobiography, Moonwalk, Michael claimed his first rhinoplasty followed him breaking his nose during a dance rehearsal, writing that the surgery was initially performed.
We can discuss that. Let me get up for sure.
To repair the injury and improve his breathing. Whether one takes that explanation entirely at face value or not, it was Michael's own account of why the procedure first took place, and would therefore have been a more accurate detail for the film to include. Instead, the sequence simplifies a far more layered and psychologically revealing chapter of Michael Jackson's life into a comparatively surface-level moment. And in doing so, it misses another opportunity to help audiences understand not just that Michael changed his appearance, but why he may have felt compelled to. Another aspect of the film that feels heavily misrepresented is Michael Jackson's creative process and his ability to collaborate with other artists and creatives around him. Throughout many of the recording scenes, particularly during the making of Thriller, Michael is depicted alone, quietly writing lyrics, creating melodies, and conceptualizing songs almost entirely by himself, with only brief appearances from figures like Quincy Jones and Bruce Sweetein, both of whom were absolutely integral to shaping the sound and identity of the album. The film creates the impression that Michael Jackson almost single-handedly conceived the music of Thriller, when in reality, the album was the result of an extraordinary collaborative effort between some of the most talented producers, songwriters, arrangers, engineers, and musicians working in popular music at the time. Michael unquestionably was the driving creative force behind the project, writing 4 of the album's 9 tracks himself and heavily shaping its vocal arrangements, concepts, and performances. But Thriller was not the work of a solitary genius operating in isolation. The title track itself demonstrates this. In the film, Michael is depicted as inventing the concept and title for Thriller entirely on his own. In reality, the song wasn't even written by Jackson and originated from songwriter Rod Temperton, who had initially written the track under the title Starlight. It was Quincy Jones who felt the song needed a stronger, more theatrical title to match the larger-than-life image Michael was evolving into during this period. Temperton would later describe locking himself in a hotel.
So there is a lot of lore behind, yeah. There's a lot of lore that we just don't know about, bro. I think the movie didn't do his job, bro. Now that I'm listening to this, I'm starting to see, like, it's not crazy to say Michael was still like he'd be a billionaire. Oh, facts. Facts he would have been the first.
Room and brainstorming titles before eventually landing on Thriller, a name that transformed the song and its album into something that felt much more iconic. The same issue extends into the film's depiction of Michael's choreography and visual creativity. During scenes involving the Beat It rehearsal process and the filming of Thriller, Michael is portrayed almost as though he single-handedly choreographed and constructed every dance routine himself before teaching them directly to the dancers. But while Michael was deeply involved in shaping his performances and movement style, many of his most famous routines were also the product of close creative collaboration. Choreographer Michael Peters played a major role in
display to public is one thing. And, maybe it was out of respect, because I ain't gonna lie, if a man's dead, you let him rest. But if the goal of the movie was to tell his story, then it should have told his story well and not try to sugarcoat or like, because in another sense, it kind of feels like they lied on the movie and they was just trying to make up a script. I don't know. Because I feel like there was a lot more they could have, acted and portrayed to how Michael was really living. But that's just me, though.
Developing the choreography for Thriller and Beat It, while Vincent Patterson contributed significantly to routines associated with Beat It and later Smooth Criminal. Jeffrey Daniel, meanwhile, famously introduced and developed dance styles that became heavily associated with Michael's image during the early 1980s, teaching Michael the moonwalk and adding elements into the iconic zombie choreography in Thriller.
So it was true that They were saying Michael Jackson didn't invent the moonwalk. He just made it look better. Dang. That's crazy.
And acknowledging those collaborators does not diminish Michael Jackson's brilliance. If anything, it gives a better insight into it. Part of Michael's genius was his ability to recognize extraordinary talent, surround himself with highly creative people, and then synthesize those contributions into something uniquely his own. By removing many of those collaborators from the creative process, the film unintentionally simplifies Michael Jackson into something less interesting, a lone musical genius conjuring masterpieces entirely from his own imagination. But the reality was far more impressive than that. Michael Jackson was not great because he worked alone. He was great because he knew how to bring together exceptional people and push them toward creating something larger than any one individual could have achieved on their own. In Michael, the film's depiction of Michael Jackson creating the choreography for Beat It in front of rival gang members from the Crips and Bloods also came with its own problems. In the biopic, Michael is first shown in the studio watching news reports about gang violence in Los Angeles, seemingly inspiring him to respond artistically. He is then depicted entering a rehearsal space where, in the presence of rival gang members, he speaks about love, unity, and music's power to bring people together before performing the now iconic Beat It choreography to their amazement, symbolically uniting them through his art. It is a compelling scene. There is just one problem. It never happened.
Don't tell me that's a lie too. Nah. Okay, see, nah, I'm mad. Cause that was the best scene out the whole movie. And there's no way you're just gonna tell me that's a lie. That's crazy, bro. I'm genuinely mad about that right now. I ain't gonna lie. It's okay.
The entire sequence is fictional. Now, to be fair, it is loosely inspired by real events. During production of the Beat It short film, Michael Jackson and director Bob Giraldi wanted to cast real gang members from Los Angeles in order to give the video greater authenticity and grit. Real members of rival gangs were brought in for the 2-day shoot to appear in the dance sequences. But rather than Michael uniting them in some transcendent moment through the power of performance, the reality was far less romanticized. Tensions reportedly flared on set almost immediately. There were rumblings between the rival groups, tempers rose, and several altercations broke out during filming. According to accounts from the production, the atmosphere became so tense that Giraldi and members of the crew ultimately decided to dismiss many of the gang members early, once they felt they had captured enough footage, largely because the crew were growing uncomfortable with the volatility of the situation. And in many ways, that real story is more interesting than the fictional one the film chooses to tell. Because showing Michael and his team taking a genuine creative risk, attempting to inject real street authenticity into a polished music video, only for the reality of gang tensions to undermine that vision, would have offered audiences a fascinating behind-the-scenes insight into the making of one of his most iconic short films. Instead, the film invents a scene that presents the exact opposite of what actually happened. In the fictionalized version, Michael is portrayed as so transcendent a figure that he's able to bring rival gangs together through music alone. In reality, even the presence of Michael Jackson on one of the biggest music video sets in the world was not enough to dissolve those tensions. And that matters because scenes like this contribute to one of the broader criticisms leveled at the film, that it too often portrays Michael as almost mythically virtuous, so uniquely gifted, pure, and beloved that the world bends around him. Rather than presenting a nuanced human portrait, who often fell victim to his idealized imaginings of those he surrounded himself with. Moments like this risk making him feel overly sanitized, less like a complicated real person in dire need of explanation, and more like a carefully curated multi-billion-dollar asset with its own public image needing to be managed. The detail is dedicated to uncovering the...
Dang, man. I'm actually mad they lied about it. Nah, I ain't gonna lie. Who made the movie? Was it Sony? Cause them niggas, hey, who made the movie, bro? Who made? Nah, we gonna look at this right now, bro. Who made the movie? Oh, Lionsgate. That's not under they not under Sony, right? So they made the Hunger Games. They made John Wick. Yeah. Man, I'm lying ass. Oh, it is gross 733.5 million worldwide, making it the second highest grossing film of 2026. Second. Oh, the Super Mario movie did more? Oh, well, it just came out, so that makes sense. Okay. It's most definitely going past that. Like, probably by the time summer over. But, what else? This is... Oh, fourth all time? Oh, Bohemian Rhapsody was a good movie. This was a good movie, bro. Actually, it actually felt real. I've never watched this. But yeah, sidetrack. But yeah, dang. Why they lie in the movie, bro? I don't like that. I don't like that, bro.